committee as we met for an organizational meeting, and I heard stories and statements from members about their deeply held belief in and love for our country and our democratic values. I was reminded once again that even in these very fraught times, there is always more that unites us than divides us. And this committee is so important as we work to promote and protect our values and our economic interests here at home and across the world. America's ability to hold the Chinese Communist Party accountable is central to that and is the most complex and important aspect of our foreign and economic policy. Protecting human rights, ensuring a fair economic playing field, promoting freedom and democracy. Generations of Americans have fought to protect these ideals, and the more successful we are, the more America and her citizens prosper and thrive. This is now our generation's challenge, and this committee, each and every member of it, stands ready to answer that call to action. So we are here to learn how to strategically compete with China and enforce a rules-based system. We are here to protect human rights and promote democracy around the world. We are here to promote American ideals which have led millions out of poverty and created opportunity and prosperity across the world. And make no mistake, this cannot happen soon enough. For too long, the CCP has flaunted human rights and economic norms. They have aided in the encroachment of authoritarian regimes throughout the world through surveillance architecture and aiding would-be autocrats in shutting down free speech and thought. The CCP has engaged in illegal subsidies and dumping, making New Jersey companies less competitive in the global marketplace. And CCP theft of U.S. trade secrets and intellectual property cost American families and workers hundreds of billions of dollars each year. Just about everyone has heard about the surveillance balloons or the Chinese alliance with Putin against Ukraine, but just as insidious is the CCP's attack on the global and U.S. economy that has resulted in job losses, lower wages, and the outsourcing of American jobs that has harmed families, small businesses, and communities across the nation. So, Mr. Paul, can you discuss where manufacturers in your association have seen rule breaking by the CCP and how that has impacted their ability to compete and create jobs?
Thank you for the statement and for the question. Very grateful. Manufacturers have been impacted by CCP policies in a number of different ways. First of all, they're competing against firms, in some cases, that are owned by the state, particularly in the steel sector, but others as well. More than half of the world's biggest steel companies are actually owned by the Chinese government, for example. Second, we have a system where China agreed to a set of rules in 2001 when it joined the World Trade Organization and has completely ignored them. The USTR just released its most recent report on China's compliance with World Trade Organization obligations and found that China's compliance has been completely inadequate and non-existent. So the state-owned enterprises who have a different cost of capital than U.S. firms, the dumping, as you mentioned, where they're selling products into the U.S. market at a cheaper rate than they are at home, the direct subsidies that the government provides for energy, lax labor and environmental standards. They're low standards to begin with, and they're rarely enforced. From time to time, there's been misalignment of the yuan, the Chinese currency, that has artificially given Chinese imports an advantage into the U.S. market. And as a result, we shed an enormous amount of manufacturing capacity in just over a decade, a stunning amount. 90,000 factories closed. We saw those job losses in the chart as well, and we saw the intellectual property theft. So it has been staggering for American manufacturing.
Thank you. We certainly saw that in New Jersey. And in October, the Biden administration announced sweeping new sanctions and export restrictions against China related to semiconductors, a sector that the CCP has built up in no small part with IP theft and forced technology transfers. Earlier this year, both Japan and the Netherlands also joined us in imposing these restrictions. Can you discuss how these types of export and investment restrictions will impact the CCP's illegal activity, such as IP theft and dumping?
Thank you again for the question, Representative. I think the long-term impact isn't entirely clear at this point, but the short-term impact has been profound. We've seen a screeching halt to a lot of U.S. personnel and company involvement in Chinese semiconductor manufacturing, which was the intent of this. The addition of Japan and Netherlands because of the supply chain with respect to semiconductors, critically important. As we enlist more allies and we expand the scope of the technology restrictions, I think we have a decent chance to be successful. That if China wants to develop high-tech semiconductors in the future, it's going to have to try to do it indigenously without the United States or our allies handing over the keys to the CCP.
Thank you so much to you and all our panelists today. I yield back.
Mr. Johnson is recognized for 5 minutes.
I fear that